One of the things we found when Sophie was born is we just didn't really know what she had and what it was. So she was born very quickly, and we originally just thought she was bruised. The nurses and doctors said that she just had a bruise from being born very quickly, and it wasn't a couple of hours before the pediatrician's office descended en masse on the hospital. Hey guys, and welcome back to Lining Up Ducks. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Rachel. I am married to Scott. We have 4 little girls, ages 7, 5, 3, and 2, and this is our journey to live more intentionally, more contentedly, and line up our ducks to go from a mess to success.
We're going to start a video series about the medical treatment our third little girl, Sophie, has to have. Rachel's mentioned it in previous videos, so we thought now we'd go in a little more in depth.
One of the things we found when Sophie was born is we just didn't really know what she had and what it was. So she was born very quickly, and we originally just thought she was bruised. The nurses and doctors said that she just had a bruise from being born very quickly, and it wasn't a couple of hours before the pediatrician's office descended en masse on the hospital and took her for all these scans and told us that she had something wrong. She looked perfect to us, except for just a small little blue patch on her face.
Right here, and then she
has
a little
and her
dimple
little
in her
dimple.
chin.
She has a dimple in her chin. So
and
there's
it's a little off-centered.
That's my gradients. Dimple.
Right there.
Yeah.
A little dimple. And it's a little blue, and a little blue looked like a bruise in her ear.
No, it wasn't her ear. It was on her cheek.
It's in her ear.
Now it is.
It was then.
It was in front of her ear.
We'll throw up some pictures if we can find some. We'll throw up some pictures so you can get an idea of what we were looking at when Sophie was first.
We didn't take a lot of very close-up pictures of it because we didn't really think anything of it. She was beautiful. She was our rainbow baby. We had just lost a child in midway through pregnancy, so I was happy to have a healthy baby girl. And so when the doctors kind of told us that there was something wrong and we were going to have to go to specialists, we didn't really know what to think. We went to her first appointment with the pediatric dermatologist in our local area. She diagnosed her as having a port wine stain. And she explained to us that a port wine stain is a capillary malformation, which affects the small capillaries and wherever the malformation is located. So she started treatments at about 3 months with a pulse dye laser to remove the port wine stain, and I'll insert some pictures for you to see as we go along of the treatments that we're talking about. It was very hard.
I've heard it described for grown-ups that get the same treatment as it feels about the same as when someone's having a tattoo removed. I don't have any tattoos, I haven't had any removed, but I'm told it doesn't tickle. And so she was so young.
They literally put her in a straitjacket and held her down. Now, that sounds horrible, but they assured me it only lasted 2 minutes, and they wouldn't let me in the room. They said I could come in, but they highly discouraged it. And so I waited in the waiting room and cried for however long it took. But she had several of those treatments, and about 7 months old, after she had had 2 or 3 pulse dye laser treatments, they had removed a good portion of the capillary malformation, especially underneath her chin and on her neck. And I was changing her diaper one night, and I noticed blue veining that I hadn't seen before. They removed the the port wine stain that they said she had. And so I snapped a picture of it, and at our next appointment, I asked her doctor about it, and she said, oh, it's just thin skin, that it will thicken over time as she ages.
But it didn't.
But it didn't. They continued the pulse dye laser treatments for 1 more round, I believe, and it wasn't working at that point. They were trying to target the more blue patch that was on her cheek, it wasn't working. We kind of took a step back and waited a little while. She told us we needed to wait and see if some other lasers later on would be beneficial to her. And at that point, it was just a waiting game. Well, when she was about a year old,
I think so. About a year.
yeah,
Maybe
September. So
maybe 16 months.
no, it was September, right before
Okay.
I was pregnant with Mary Claire.
So 14 months.
When she was about 14 months old, I noticed that she had veining on the inside of her mouth that we had never seen before. It looks very puffy, and she's got a deep, what would be a gash to somebody else, but it's truly just, it's a deep vein that pulls in the rest of her cheek. And it's very puffy and purple around it, and we'd never noticed it before. Also, the veining on her face was getting darker at the time. It wasn't too bad at that point, but it was getting darker at the time. So I called her pediatric dermatologist, and she took Sophie's case before a board of physicians to get opinions. And at that point, they suggested that it might be a venous malformation. So they scheduled us to meet with an interventive radiologist in our local area. That was a mess.
Yes, to say that it didn't go well and the planning was all messed up would be an understatement. We live 4 hours from this hospital, and I think Rachel, I had to keep the other kids, so Rachel and Sophie made either 1 or 2 trips up there, and he didn't do anything.
Well, we made 1 or 2 trips up there being told that we were going to have some kind of treatment done that day, so I would have to keep her from eating. And then we got up there and they said, oh no, you're just having an ultrasound, or oh no, you're just talking to the doctor, and it was just a mess.
So, I mean, you're having to deal with a 4-hour drive at 3:30, 4 in the morning with a 14-month-old child that hasn't eaten in at least 12 hours. So, all for just a conference. So it didn't go well.
It was just a mess. So after meeting with the interventive radiologist, she had MRIs. He looked at me and said, it's not a venous malformation, it's just part of her port wine stain. So he sent us back to her pediatric dermatologist, which they were supposed to call me within a few days of that appointment and schedule another appointment, and I didn't hear from them. Finally, I called back and they said, oh, we won't see you for 6 months. So a mom that is not getting the answers from the physicians that her child is being treated by resorts to Dr. Google sometimes. And I joined the...
Is he PhD doctor?
He is.
Not MD.
He's PhD Dr. Google. And I joined the Birthmark's support group on Facebook, and I'll link them down below for you. And I was in I just walked into a wonderful circle of moms that are dealing with vascular birthmarks all over the world with their children. And I posted pictures of Sophie, and I just asked for help. And most of them suggested that it was a low flow venous malformation, and which is what I had thought it was from the beginnings of my research, because I wasn't getting the answers that we were hoping to find with her doctors of a real diagnosis. I did a lot of research, a ton of research, and brought the research to her doctors, asking her if this is what she had. When we went for her 18-month appointment is when I knew we had to find another physician. I've never been so angry that I cried before. And I was being accused of being concerned about how my child looked. And I don't care how she looks, I think she's beautiful. And I was told that she could just wear makeup when she turned 16. When she got older. And that's not something a mother that knows her child has a medical problem that needs to be addressed wants to hear. So I walked out of that office and I never went back. And I spent the next 6 months, every doctor that I came in contact with, I didn't care what their specialty was, I would show them pictures of Sophie and the progression of the veining and how dark it was getting and how much bigger it was getting, and ask them for help and ask them for a referral to anybody that they might know. And this one amazing doctor came through. He said, just give me 24 hours. Let me do some research, and I'll find something for you. So he, at the time, referred us to a clinic in in Orlando, Florida, that was a true multidisciplinary vascular anomalies clinic. And a lot of hospitals say they have vascular anomalies clinics, but they're not necessarily all working together at the same point in time, so you can just go in on one day and meet with all the specialists. But this place in Orlando was one of those specialty clinics. But we ended up having to move to Texas. And so I did a lot of research and found the Vascular Anomalies Clinic at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. I had...
We called ahead before we even chose. I went to a new job, so we called ahead before I even chose a healthcare plan. We made sure that whichever healthcare plan we chose would cover the treatment and would cover the doctors in the hospital. When was our first appointment? Like
March of 2019.
March of 2019.
No.
Yeah.
March of 2019. So
we moved
2.5.
We moved to Texas in September of 2018, and Rachel immediately started trying to find a place for Sophie to receive treatment, and she found Texas Children's Hospital in Houston that had a multidisciplinary vascular anomalies clinic. And so we had our first appointment there in March of 2019. And I was there, I wasn't receiving care, but the level of care that is provided at that clinic was astounding. We showed up at around 10
that morning,
driving in from San Antonio.
Our scans, Sophie's scans, hadn't been sent over like we thought they had from the children's hospital that she had been treated with before. And they just scrambled and got them.
They got on the phone, they figured it out. So we got there at 10. By 11, we were meeting with first specialist.
Pediatric dermatologist.
Was it the pediatric dermatologist
that
first?
was first.
So we met with him. The pediatric dermatologist wasn't first? No, that was the interventive radiologist. So we met with the pediatric dermatologist first, and then about 30 or 40 minutes later, the interventive radiologist came in, and he had already looked at Sophie's scans that had only been there like an hour or so. Then they sent her for another ultrasound.
And when he says ultrasound, we're not talking a minute or two. She had an hour-long ultrasound where not only the ultrasound tech was looking, but also the interventive radiologist was in there as well.
Was in the room,
looking to see how deep the veining in her face went, how large the veins were, how much blood flow was running through them.
And specifically if there was any intrusion in her neck. So after that, they sent us to lunch and
consulted a hematologist.
A hematologist, and consulted an ENT.
Who just happens to be one of the few doctors in the country. I know it's weird that it's an ENT, but she's one of the few doctors in the country that actually deals with low-flow venous malformation treatment on the inside of mouths, because there's very few lasers in the country. It's actually an old laser that is used, so there's very few of them in the country that can be used on the inside of a mouth. And she did a fellowship at Arkansas Children's Hospital to learn how to do it, and she's absolutely amazing.
So by the time we came back from lunch, an hour or so later, we went almost immediately back into another room. We talked to Dr. Rosenberg, the ENT at that time. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Sophie had seen 3 doctors. They had consulted with a 4th. She had had a full extensive ultrasound, and we had a complete treatment plan.
I was in tears when Dr. Rosenberg told me that it was a low-flow venous malformation. I started crying, and I think she was afraid that I was upset at the diagnosis, but it was because it's what I had been saying it was for a year, that I hadn't been being listened to. And it was just a moment of validation sometimes a mama does know best. And so sometimes you do trust your instincts, and they are right. And I absolutely could have kissed her. But what is a low flow venous malformation? I'm going to read it because I am not going to say this correctly. But okay, a low flow venous malformation is a birthmark that is a collection of veins that do not work properly, that stretch and enlarge over time. So Sophie's are usually light blue in color if she's just kind of about her normal day. But if she is running or crying or upset,
mad,
they get a really dark blue. And some of them actually
swell a little bit.
They swell and enlarge
Like
and pop out like a varicose vein. So it grows as she grows. And we had seen rapid growth in the 6 months prior to that March 2019 appointment. So this is not a low flow venous malformation is not something that can be fixed. It is a lifelong condition. It will grow, like I said, as she grows, but more so it will grow as her hormones change. So as she gets into puberty, as she has children, when she goes through menopause, if she ever gets on birth control, all of those fluctuations in hormones not only cause growth, but rapid growth. And where hers is, we're talking about bulging out from her face and possibly growing inward into her muscle structure and into her windpipe and her esophagus. She's also got it under her eye, so if those veins grow, it can affect her eyesight, and she's got it in her soft palate. So Dr. Rosenberg said it's a very extensive malformation. It thankfully is in the superficial layers of her skin. So right now we're not looking at deep muscle problems, and thankfully it is still a low flow malformation. We are able to be treated with early intervention lasers. Sophie has been aware of her venous malformation for many years. People have been coming up to us.
As many as.
Well, Sophie's been aware of her venous malformation for a while. I think it's been at least about a year that she's really known, she would ask questions about it. We call them her angel kisses. I told her she was kissed by angels and that only special babies get beautiful birthmarks like hers. And eventually, when she's not 3, I will explain what her birthmark is and why she has to have these surgeries. But she loves them. She asks why she can't have them on both sides of her face, or why mommy doesn't have them, because she thinks they're beautiful, and so do we. We would not be choosing to treat her if it was truly a cosmetic problem. We and the doctors are trying to prevent them from growing at a rapid rate while she's young, so when she does go through hormonal changes later and they do grow rapidly, the growth will have been controlled up to that point. What does Sophie's future look like?
Every 3 months or so, Rachel and Sophie pack their bags and get on a plane and fly to Houston. She's there for about 5 days.
Yeah, about a week.
And then she comes home and has to stay inside for 2 weeks. Because one of the side effects of the laser treatment is if she's exposed to sunlight, especially when it's healing initially, it can cause hyperpigmentation. So she could end up with the laser, where she had treatment, she could end up with lots of dark blotches and abundance of melanin on the right side of her face. Mm-hmm. So
she wears a hat everywhere.
All the time.
All the time. She has to have sunscreen on. When he says sunscreen, it's not just when she goes outside. She has to wear sunscreen even inside the house. She has to wear sunscreen when she's inside the car because UV rays come through the windows. So she wears sunscreen 24 hours a day, and anytime she goes outside, she has to wear a hat. And that's not just in the 2 weeks. That's all the time. And she has been so resilient. She loves her hats, and she is great at remembering her hats. So pretty much every video you see of us from this point on will have Sophie in a hat.
Yep.
So if you know any good hatters for small children, please let me know in the comments below, because I am having a dickens of a time finding wide-brimmed sun hats for children.
Well, we can get a $20 hat at a big box store that lasts about 2 weeks, and it's already starting to fray. And so, yeah, drop us a comment down below and let us know where we can buy decent kids' hats.
And they have to be wide brimmed hats. It can't just be a baseball cap because she's got this down on her neck that has to be covered as well.
How are we gonna wrap this up? I mean, what's the?
I've got it.
We've gotten everything.
All right, I've got it.
You got it.
I got it. Just sit back and relax and watch this Wendy work. So that's pretty much it. I really wanted to give y'all an in-depth look at Sophie's treatment and what we're going to be facing moving forward. I did not want our viewers to think Sophie was bruised. That's the most common misconception that we face in public, is that Sophie has been hurt. In fact, we carry...
Yeah, I carry a letter in my wallet.
We all do, even the
Rachel
grandparents.
All of us have a copy of a letter from her original doctor explaining what her
condition is.
What the bruise is. That way, if anybody ever asks anything, I can say, hold on.
And you would be
Here's a letter from the
surprised.
doctor.
You would be surprised how many times I've had to pull that letter out for random strangers. I don't mind pulling it out for doctors, but I've had to pull it out for random strangers before. You're going to see Sophie a lot. I don't want you to feel like you can't ask questions about her condition. And we're going to document her journey through this every 3-month surgery process on our channel and on our social media pages so you can follow along. One of the biggest things I have come up against as a mom of a child with a low-flow venous malformation is finding information and finding children with malformations like hers. There are a lot of high-flow malformations that I have seen. There are a lot of hemangiomas that I have seen. But there's very few moms that I have seen that have posted information about low-flow venous malformations. They're just not as common. So I really wanted to link all of the information down below about the birthmarks.org and the Birthmark Foundation that is on the Vascular Birthmarks Foundation, that the Facebook support group that we are a part of. Please, moms, if you have questions, please feel free to comment. Please feel free to message me. I have my email address down below as well. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to talk to you because I definitely needed somebody to talk to at the beginning of this journey. It's hard. It's very hard. And she's a trooper. She's awesome. So I'm going to link everything down below for you, all of our resources. A big, huge thank you to the Ronald McDonald House in Houston that gives us a place to stay anytime there is one available for us when we are there, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to afford to stay anywhere close to the hospital for her treatment. So that's been just an amazing blessing. Please let us know if you have any questions. If you need a follow-up video, I will kind of pull the questions together and we'll do a Q&A video. But thanks for coming on this journey with us. It's going to be a long road. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be a process, but she's okay and we're okay, and I am welcoming you on this journey with us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Are you pretending to be babies? Mm-hmm. Oh. Can I boop your nose? Can I boop your nose? Can I give you tickles? Can I give you tickles? You gotta cough a little bit. I do just love to laugh. Do you like to giggle? Okay.
Just like our video and subscribe to our channel. Please.